Welcome back. This time I am with Kojenwa Moitt. She is CEO of Zebra Public Relations. And this time I would like to discuss with her the role of the culture wars in policy, in politics, and how that affects policy, because normally these culture wars are used as distractions to bread and butter issues that are the issues that in the end move voters. And the voters may not have a clear idea about policy. That's true, because they can't connect the dots if the media, if politicians don't help them connect the dots. But whatever the way they conceive policy, is that's what moves them to vote in one direction of the other, or worse, that's what could motivate apathy. So, do you agree with this take?
I do actually. And I was just speaking to someone else today from Ridgewood, New York. And I said, I'm really happy with Mamdani's win.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, his middle name is Kwame. He's a natural born leader. He's going to do well because he's speaking about those bread and butter issues that we're discussing. Because what he's saying is that yesterday Trump has threatened to throw him out of the country and remove his citizenship, strip
Hmm.
him, imagine, of his citizenship. He's not connecting the dots. First of all, it's completely unheard of. It's outrageous as a statement as such. But the other thing is that he expressed to the public that, in fact, this is a diversion tactic. We are getting crushed out here, and we just had to win based on the bread and butter issues as such. The rents are exceptionally high. We cannot maintain. We cannot at the same time pay our rents and pay for dinner. Something has got to give, right? And then we heard that the chasm between the rich and the poor is widening, and that there will ultimately be an erosion of the middle class. And this is what we're experiencing. We're falling through the cracks because, as I said, when you have security guard, security officer at Walmart, something's up. People are feeling a pinch, no?
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't agree with some of his specific Hawani's specific policies, but I do agree that he's addressing bread and butter issues, and that's what has given him the upper hand in the primaries for the mayoral race. And it's not just me. There are people who you cannot suspect, or right winger like Paul Krugman, who has written specifically about his race, saying exactly what I am saying. I agree completely. So, if so, would you agree that unfortunately the way the cultural issues has been presented in the last decade has been counterproductive? Let me put you an example. Immigration. You yourself could see Bernie had a very reasonable position in 2016. Then in 2020, he adopted the abolitionize position of the far left, which was open borders. Not what the right says it's open borders, but what is really open borders, which then had influence in the Biden administration. And you could see a positive trend in the Gallup polls, a positive trend in favor of immigration, turning negative soon after Biden takes office, because it was pure mayhem. Voters don't read the reports by the Peterson Institute, or read the Paul Krugman's column about immigration. What they see is, for instance, in the border towns, that migrants without any other means to sustain themselves, because they don't get a work permits in the first 6 months, are roaming on the streets, waiting to get back to the shelter. That's what people see. And that's what's had fed that image of chaos that has surrounded immigration. There were many ways, but you see that there were even members of the Biden administration bullying people in HHAs, in Labor Department, because they said the way you want to do it, we cannot process these people at this rate. So this is overwhelming us. And you see, and now Trump, what happens is, and I have written long ago, what I was predicting that if this was going to continue, people was going to rationalize Trump's cruelty. They were going to think, well, we have already tried the humanitarian way, Biden's way. That's not true. It's the mediocre way, but people don't see any alternative. So whether we like it or not, we have to stick to Trump's, right?
I think it's the wrong ideology. The one thing that I can give Trump credit for is media, right? He's able to manipulate the media, and he does that using images, right? For example, I had even Black people in New York telling me they'd rather go for Trump. I said, why? He said, these migrants are living in hotels, eating our good food, and we ourselves don't have. It's Trump manipulating the media and sending migrants to New York when their case is actually in California. So, of course, New York is going to have to put up these people. You know, we're humane people. We're not just going to leave people on the streets to starve. Some of these people are children. So they have been dumped. DeSantis has dumped them in Martha's Vineyard when really they should have been
they
in
weaponize
Ohio.
them and bus them to Chicago, bus them to New York.
To Chicago and New York. Meanwhile,
and it worked.
And it worked. And the images that came out.
And you know what's the most
comfortable inside of the hotel. These people are malignant. They are demonic. They try anything they can.
Yes, but I know that they are moved by xenophobic, by hatred, by hateful feelings.
Terrible.
But what upsets me the most is the people in the Biden administration who push for childish policies. So you could have brought those immigrants under other ways. Look, I have written about.
Canada is the longest shared open border that we have. Don't you think Mexican migrants are coming to Canada? They are. And guess what? They get processed at the airport. Hello, who are you? Please share your information, your details. We will see if we have labor available for you. These guys are building the homes.
Well, let me take something of what you have just said with something else. So you would think that people in the Biden administration that were going to have a more flexible immigration policy would be aware of all that has been written about immigration, right? Well, wrong, because I have a video where I have uploaded up to 3 documents, and I missed even one that was older, that had warned policymakers about the effects of drastic demographic movements on attitudes toward immigration. In other words, you had to manage the flow. You had to find a way to manage the flow,
right?
For otherwise the effects on the population would have been counterproductive.
Correct. It's like civil planning, right? Like these are
exactly, and that was 100% absent. If you knew you are dealing with people like DeSantis, like Abbott, you had to be responsible to.
You have to be, but he's irresponsible. He doesn't.
And now
doesn't value anything. Nothing.
No, it's because these people in abolish eyes are moved by their whims. They don't bother to open a book to read a paper.
They don't read. They don't. These are unread people. These are
they end up playing with the lives of people.
They play with the lives of people. In the interim, people are dying. I think my neighbor was saying, I think they killed a Canadian, held him up in ICE. He was a visitor. They had him questioned. The leadership comes from the top. The malignancy comes from the top and then filters all the way down to the border patrol officers and how they see people, receive people. Only the strong ones resist and think, actually, like, these are our friends, our partners. We can turn this into a brilliant economy. Maybe we need to hire more district court judges to process these cases on time. There's a rate of speed at which we will need to do things in order to process all these people, or maybe there's a limit. People are
And
still showing up at the border, I'm sure.
And now
Is
to
that
tie it
even
with what you were saying, there were Republican governors, for instance, it was not Philadelphia, but it was the other city, the other big city in Pennsylvania, that were, yeah, it was Philadelphia, I believe, the Republican governor was, and it was reported by the Washington Post, was the asking the federal government to send more migrants because they needed labor.
They need the labor, Alfredo. They
And
need the
yet
labor.
you see the way this case the flow was mishandled. They just let them roam around in border cities where they were needed in other places. So that excusable?
They
Is
are, they
that's
are,
inexcusable?
they are a hot mess. It is inexcusable what they've done. This will go down as like, another Pearl Harbor Vietnam situation in the history books. God bless if people still are writing and keeping records. They are a mess. It is a mess. Right now, the plan that they had apparently in Project 2025 for the Black
Yeah.
people is to displace all the migrants, send them back, and have the Black people going back to the fields to till the soil for $11 an hour, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're not going to do that because we already said we're not going back. Meanwhile, you have a migrant population that was willing to do this work to sustain us, to feed us. Imagine, I think they got run out in LA. The people said, ICE has come here, sleeping in our beds, the same beds that we are cleaning. Imagine the hypocrisy of it, and had to be exposed for who they are. So I hope they get run out of town. I hope that people are packing. And if it were me, I'd be packing because I'm like, you're trying to separate me from my child. It's disrespectful. And what are they doing with those children? I would love to know. I would love to know where are those children? That's what I would like
The
to know.
matter is that if in his first administration, if you follow for instance, in Real Clear Politics, the Trump's popularity, it was not affected by the children in cases, much less now. Even though it's worse, but let's go even to for these people who drop themselves on the flag. The current immigration system is so immoral in terms of American values
Yeah,
that a person like Alexander Hamilton, who was the most important immigrant in our history,
yeah,
who was born out of wedlock, poor as a rat, in Nieves, an island in the Caribbean,
Davis. Yeah,
an island in the Caribbean,
yeah,
could have not been able to come legally with this law.
yeah.
So, if the most important immigrant, if a founding father cannot pass the test of the current immigration law, what kind of immigration law
What
is
kind of
that?
immigration? Yeah, it's maybe the new slave trade. I think, this is how it's the supremacist ideology. It's a white supremacist ideology, is what we're experiencing right now. I cannot go to the airport and take off my yarmulke. I cannot take off my sari. I'm just born into the world with my proper skin that I happen to have. And if the ideology prevailing at the top is that white supremacy should reign, it's going to be a bad problem for me. I don't know what they're going to do because the point of the matter is America is browning. It just naturally is, and they don't like that. They don't like that. They don't want it. They see themselves as dying off, I suppose. They don't understand where has their culture gone. It has gone nowhere. It has always served them. Now that this is threatening, right? It's about to be a problem, but they're going to encounter a fight, and I hope a revolution ultimately, because we will not be disrespected in this way. I mean, was it not the case that Texas was originally a part of Mexico?
Well, yes, it is. Then they split, and
Okay.
they conveniently requested to join the United States. But
Correct.
let me jump to race. So we agree that an important issue, the main motivator of the far right is which is immigration has been grossly mishandled, and even you know what
Correct.
is worse, that we have rich historical reference references to create a new narrative.
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy in 1958 came with a work, A Nation of Immigrants, and that's what was based on which he based his vision. To create a system in which accidents of birth, like country of origin, skin color, accidents of birth, would not be a factor in you be allowed or denied the access to the American dream. You can trace that to even to Lincoln and to Hamilton, and you could and yet we I every time I see one of these leaders supposedly pro-immigrant leaders, when they say we are a nation of laws, they cannot defend themselves with these arguments. So they allow their bigoted part to look as patriotic, not as white supremacists, but as people who are concerned for the nation. That's pathetic, right?
It's pathetic. It's just so sad. We almost see this as the fall of an empire, because for so many decades things were good, and even though that ideology had prevailed in some corners, they were relegated to the darkest corners, or the darkest corners, let's say, of the internet. Even like you'd be hard pressed to find an openly racist person, although you'd heard some whisperings that these people existed. They thrive on hate. This is who they are. They're uneducated. They thrive to malign. They will sell out for money. Money in and of itself is not a bad thing if applied correctly. It's a malignancy that we're most offended by, right? And that the son of an immigrant and a felon, who he himself would not pass the test, is sitting up there in a presidential suite. And now I'm hearing, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I said on the night, and I was in New York because I'd flown in to vote for Kamala. And I said, something isn't right. I think I woke up at like 2 or 3 in the morning. Something wasn't right. Everything had gone red. I would like it to be revealed, and I'm sure it will be, that there was voter manipulation as it relates to Elon and Starlink. And he's saying he's now going to dump more information about Trump out there. So we're living in a fucking reality show. And he's giving money to the Democrats. We're like, fine, we'll take it. But also, you can't be trusted. Can you imagine?
Now that you mentioned the case of Kamala Harris, you could see people. So, since the moment Biden withdrew to the next month and a half, Kamala skyrocketed. If the elections had been that day, she would have won.
She would have won. She would have swept the shit out.
I was following in Real Clear Politics out of 7 swing states. She had 4. It was one. She was tied in one, and in the other 2 were Trump's. She would have won.
Alfredo, they're seeing the discrepancies.
Let's get back to what we said at the beginning. She abandoned her bread and butter issues, or otherwise she confined those issues to the echo chamber of rallies. But when she was in front of media, she talked about how Liz Cheney was her friend. She jumped from one unpopular status quo Biden to another unpopular status quo Cheney, how she was backed by CEOs, and she abandoned those bread and butter issues while Trump adopted them, lied, but adopted them. And now that she was defeated, you see that astonishingly, far from admitting that we screw up, we should have stuck to the bread and butter issues to the end. They start coming with ridiculous excuses like that she lost because of misogyny and racism. And it's not that misogyny and racism don't exist. They do, but they didn't cause, because otherwise, if racism and misogyny were the causes of her defeat, she would have never been on top. She could
Yeah.
have never, you see, because unless those prejudices were on vacation during that month and a half, so do you see that kind of ridiculous excuses that were very clear? Remember we discussed in the case of the DNC when they were electing the chairman Ken Martin.
Mhm.
There is still the touch from the working class. They forget that Latinos that they have lost atrociously, and many black people are working class.
Yeah. Yeah. Many people are working class. Guess what? Many people are single parents. Many people are going through some kind of life change, like a divorce or a marriage or having a baby. And we are real human beings that we have to make money. We have to earn our bread. We have to be able to have enough to breathe. This is a
Uh,
society we're living in that even breathing costs money.
and
Breathing
and
costs
add
money.
to that the huge uncertainty in the economy because we had high levels of inflation after a while.
High level of inflation. I hosted an event
Mhm.
yesterday. The title was simple: How to Win Business Grants. And we had inside of a week 54 registrations. It turns out everybody's got a business idea and they have to learn how to make money and they have to continue to fundraise so that they can have capital, so that they can spend capital growing, right? We can't all
Mm.
be YouTube creators. We can't all be basketball stars.
Mhm.
We can't, we all this is called a market. So if the fear is AI is going to take over. Okay, so what are we going to do? What are we going to do? You know what I mean? We have to go into vocations.
So if that is so, then and you have a very strident far left. From pure research and other sources, we know what the black priorities are: education and economy. In the case of Latinos, the same thing.
Right.
And yet you have a very strident voice in the far left insisting on ridiculous issues like the Latinx issue or blackface or issues, some of which have merit, but even in those cases, my question is, don't we have much bigger fish to fry? And
We do. And those far left
and
issues.
let me give,
Hmm.
ask you the question. If so, why the Democratic Party is so weak to not set a clear, draw a clear line saying, hey, you don't speak for me. These people are hardworking people in the Black Latino community, and these are the priorities. So I need to message to address those priorities, not yours.
Hmm.
Not the pronouns, not the Latinx, not the blackface, but it's the issue of how to bread and butter.
The far left, I mean, their agenda is to kind of dismantle and educate, and that has its place when
Mhm.
policy has been revised, right? Like when you're talking about anti-Black racism or anti-Hispanic racism, those issues have a place in the discourse, right? In the classrooms, right? That's why you're seeing such a movement from the extreme right to even dismantle education. For them to come after Harvard, for me, is like such an exciting story because Harvard actually has the money to fight back and they've asked for a restraining order against the government, right? So issues that the far left are concerned about, we're seeing those ideas, those ideologies play out in the classroom, which the far right dislikes, right? And so their mandate is to dismantle education altogether, not the right move at all. Insofar as the bread and butter issues, they have to be addressed. It's
I know.
education.
I agree completely. The issues are legitimate.
Yeah,
What I abhor is the way they address the issues. I am Martin Luther King man. Martin
yeah,
Luther King realized first fought for civil rights, and we see that nobody even mentions the Voting Rights Act that was struck that was the clause in 2013 by the Supreme Court,
yeah.
and who died with the same vision that Roosevelt, economic rights to make those voting rights worth something. But you don't see that from for instance Black Lives Matter. That's the message of, for instance, Reverend Barber from the Poor People's Campaign, but it's not the message of Black Lives Matter. They are more about offending flags, the Chamama labels, and the problem is that they trivialize the issues. And for instance, let's say a man from West Virginia. My father is an alcoholic. My sister is hooked on OxyContin, and my brother has lost his job. And you say you have problems because they don't ask you your pronouns. I have problems. You don't have problems. How is that possible? Because we let the people who should be in charge of, for both brown and black people, is Reverend Barber. But Reverend Barber is enclosed in an echo chamber of mediocre marketers in repairers of the bridge, while the narrative is defined by the most bizarre voices that precisely allow Trump and his people to mischaracterize, ridicule, and alienate the working class.
Yeah, I mean, there's one writer I'm following. I think his name is Hussein Halak, but he was talking about, mockery as a tactic to dominate someone else. It's one that works very, very well. You notice you've seen them brand, the libtards, when they can't fight about policy or even that something is a good idea, you just ad hominem attack, ad hominem attack and you mix that and that's what works. And what I find for the other side is that they're not able to fight in that ring as such. These are WWE fighters, right? It's about what it looks like, and it's got to be dirty, and you have to get in there. So you have to be able to attack them on other grounds, right? On other grounds. I advocate for Martin Luther King as much as I do for Malcolm X, right? Is sometimes you do have to become violent.
At the end of his life, basically, they both believe in the same.
That's what it is, right? Is you have to become violent and you have to now start, like I was advocating 14.3, which most people had forgotten. I was speaking to a very wealthy millionaire. He had forgotten that the man had been found to have committed an insurrection. I said, well, isn't that convenient? Because it benefits him, right? It benefits him to have conveniently forgotten that the man had been committed an insurrection, that Jamie Raskin's son had died by suicide a week before they had erected gallows to hang him. What? Violence? Yes. Here it is, right? So it's going to have to come to a head at some point because, when you're threatening a possible elected mayor with imprisonment, and that you are flirting with the idea of denaturalizing someone who is very well born in this country, you got problems, and they're gonna have to fight back.
The question there is what has to happen for people to be apathetic, at least to that kind of narrative. Because what happens is precisely what we have been talking about, is that you use a future WWE fighters. Yes, they know how to use the prejudices and to sell, because that's what the WWE does. They are not real fights. But when you have to face that, you have to come up with UFC fighters, people who really know how to fight.
That's
so,
right.
In other words, you have to have a clear message people can respect. That way, they cannot ridicule you. That way, they cannot try to tie you to the pronouns or the Latinx,
Right.
because
Exactly.
they can. Because
They
people
can,
realize, no, he is not like that. There are other people who are like that, but the Democratic Party is silent. It keeps playing dead
They're
Kamala.
silent and they play dead. They're fractured among them, I feel.
Mhm.
Because they're fractured among them because my message had always been you guys are playing too small and too weak, right? And
Mhm.
that becomes a problem. Well, we don't want to be seen as the angry Black person, and they go low and we go high. We go low. We go low. If they go low, you have to go low with them and meet them right where they're at and beat them at their low.
Look, you don't have to. People may not know the details of policy, but people can perceive when you know what you are talking about.
They know about a fight. And one thing I know about
So
the American people is
when people know that they perceive that you know what you are talking about, the other person cannot try to tie you to anything
they
because
can't do it. They can't do
you
it.
look credible.
You look credible and you are credible. Look at Jasmine
Now,
Crockett.
compare that to the Democratic Party, to Kamala Harris herself. He made a promise, a ridiculous promise in 2016, I believe, or 2020, 2020, about transgender people, surgery for transgender people in prisons. There was a time where pretty much everybody in the Democratic Party was pandering to the far right. So it was not only her. But she could have said simply, I misspoke. I have changed my mind.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
she
Yes.
avoided the issue. And by
Yeah.
avoiding the issue,
Yeah.
she gave credibility to the
Yeah.
attacks of the Republican Party.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so hard to pinpoint what exactly it would have been. Other people posited, well, she hadn't done the Joe Rogan interview because
Yeah.
he was beneath her and so on and so forth. She didn't want to wrestle in the mud with pigs, whatever the case may be. It
Look,
happened in Iraq.
but Rogan has had endorsed Bernie in 2016,
Hmm.
and she has Bernie Rogan is not the kind of that kind of. He might not be a library. He is more the voice of the common man, but he is not his show is not a food fight.
Right, right. For sure, right? So for me, maybe I would have played that a bit different. But the point is, I was upset with the Democratic Party for not looking into what Elon was doing because while they were doing all their nonsense, they're messing with AI and messing with new technologies. And these guys are way late in the game. Late, 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 late in the game. Elizabeth Warren had warned the people early in the game, listen, big tech has the power to shift everything for us. Let's look into it. They didn't do it then. They didn't do it then. Right now we're in a problem where we don't know. I believe he was upset that the South Africans turned things down with the Starlink deal. Well, the reason they said that is because they don't trust him. And currently, I believe the cables are run out of underwater. And he would have had it that it's a satellite. But what does that mean? That he controls the message, he controls the media. And if he's not a credible person, or he's having a bad day, or he had too many drugs that day, then he's able to manipulate people's minds. And they've already been there with apartheid. So they're smart thinking people. They were able to rise up out of their condition of oppression. I'm simply asking the Black and brown people, our allies, to rise up against this oppression and see it for what it is.
That issue is not solid, and yet is part of, of something that has also been deteriorated. The role
Yeah.
of government, because the role
Yes.
of government is in this case regulation. Because if
Yeah.
you are,
Yeah.
if you, what you talk about that, I am also started. I also remember that at some time it was Elon Musk who make a threat about withdrawing the service of Starlink from Ukraine. What
Hmm.
so you could not let something that affects national security to become a toy subject to the whims of the owner, even if
Oh,
it's the owner.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But
I mean,
and yet you see something so basic that like the government, so Dutch was an exercise in improvisation and stupidity. They put a bunch of teenagers who were tech savvy to decide on what roles of government were valid or not. That was a three-ring circus. And yet, the Democratic Party has the tradition of FDR, in which I am. The tradition, if you don't like FDR, you have the tradition of Al Gore rematching government.
That's true. Yeah. Yep.
And yet, they were completely incapable to counter Dutch narrative with one of their own. They just kept silent. And when they opened their mouth, yes, I don't know if you know that Chuck Schumer declared how he has opposed the Trump's budget bill by renaming it because their name was ridiculous. When people hear that kind of nonsense, they say these people are completely detached. I don't care. I don't care what the name of the bill is.
I don't know what the name of the party is, but they're crazy people.
So I don't care what I don't care what the name of the bill is. I care about how it affects me.
That's correct. That's correct. I don't care about the name of the bill. I don't care how it's been branded. It could have been called Poo Poo Bill.
Yeah.
I just want to know, well, what does it do? What does it stand for? And I don't see that much is good. I don't see that much is good. For me,
I am for Poo Poo Bill if Poo Poo Bill is a good bill.
If it's a good bill, I'm for Poo Poo Bill. Okay. If it helps me, I will call it the Poo Poo Bill and I will say thank you. These people are outrageous and mad. They completely forgot that their job was to look after their citizens. They completely forgot that the job description has to do with managing the health and the well-being of your population. They have prioritized money and greed and kickbacks, all things that we want also.
Has become the party of consultants and donors.
These people are lost. I think the people should take back. I'm for the revolution from Bastille days, that the people should rise up and take their money. And that's what they're worried about with Mamdani. Oh, bumbling.
I am an FDR guy.
No, motherfucker, the rent's too goddamn high and we can't eat.
I am an FDR guy. So we have that precedent. Why? But if you ask the average voter, even the average Democrat, what the New Deal was about, they cannot answer you because they don't know.
We don't know a concept of a plan. What is happening to healthcare? Oh my God, they're calling Health First and Aetna Health to see if they've been kicked off their fucking plan. Me, myself, I was giving birth in New York. I was planning to fly back to Canada. I didn't make it. It's only on the advice of someone, a Hispanic lady, I'll never forget. That's why it's for my raza, that she told me, well, why don't you apply for the Medicaid? Because you would be entitled to certain things. And it seems like you're by yourself and you would probably need the support anyway. And there are funds for that. And that's what good government does. You take care of the most vulnerable. You take care of the people who are most vulnerable. The grandmas making tamale on the corner, because guess what? They have to feed the construction workers, that the construction workers are going to go and build that 5-story building on the corner. Okay, so it's a circular economy. They're going to find themselves in a very bad situation shortly, because if the price of eggs have gone up 400%.
Forget the price of eggs. The effect of tariffs is going to be start being felt in 6, 7, 8 months, and then the effective prices is going to hammer the working class while the number of layoffs increases. So it's going to be ugly.
It's going to be really ugly, really, really ugly, really fast. We're all, stressed out. I talked to those 52 founders yesterday. They're like, well, are the grants going away? Is the funding gone? I don't have an answer. I remember being in 2008 with the Madoff scandal, and we were in anarchy. None of us knew what to do. And my only response was double down on your marketing. Double down on your marketing, folks. See if you can in any way make sure that whatever business that you're in, that they know where to find you and that you're really good at what you do because it's about to be Hunger Games up in here, unfortunately. I was saying to someone too the other day that it's like Gilead. I'm looking now at Margaret Atwood, who made The Handmaid's Tale and
Mm.
created this dystopia in film version wherein we have now been co-opted by a malignant government that has nothing good in mind for us except to increase the birth rate, of white citizens. We're living in a nightmare. Let's be honest.
And
Let's be
just
honest.
to not because there are, to not mention another issue that is also silent in in the culture wars is the issue of transsexual. I have had two very dear friends who were gay. It bothered me to see how the issue has been reduced to ridiculous things like pronouns and transsexual people beating women in women's sports. Well, while you see real issues like, for instance, the budgets for healthcare in the NIH,
Yeah.
which benefit gay people, LGBT people, the more is being cut drastically in Trump's bill.
Yeah,
So
these people, yeah.
you see those people those issues that are real because LGBT people are subjected to higher levels of, poverty, bullying. They are the first. So there are lots of stressful situations, and these clowns came with the pronouns, came with with Leah Thomas in
Attack
sports.
them. Yeah, to attack them, right? And treat them like poo-poo. And so that they can be shat upon by these weirdos. These people seem to be obsessed with genital organs. Something is deeply wrong. I posit that, a lot of them have been possibly sexually molested as children. They have very weird ideologies about what people's sexual lives are like. I don't care. It's not my business. It's not for me to decide. What you do when you see your physician is up to you, in
Mhm.
my view. What you do, how you identify, that is up to you. But I remember going to university. I went to U of T and they always talked about it. There's a holy trinity, they reminded me, between gender, race, and class. And here it is: gender, race, and class. I had a trans friend that she drank herself to death. She drank herself to death because she couldn't get work. And she had to then do blow off someone's balls in a car at the back of her apartment in Brownsville, Texas, because she needs money. Although she has a very nice brain, a good brain, she could work in politics. Times are still hard. And they take advantage of these people and they're into humiliation, I find the MAGA. That's their thing. They traffic in humiliation and exposing people to laugh at them and mock them. Such an ugly game. I don't care about that. That's not
That
my focus.
and yet the way they sell, that's MAGA. But the other Trump supporters are, for instance, all those people who in San Francisco, in New York, and the Bronx, all those Latinos, all those working class who have voted for Trump. Obviously, they have not voted for Trump because they share those beliefs. Even I could see election polls from Hispanics. The beliefs of the MAGA people had nothing to do with these Latino people who have voted for Trump. But
No.
there has been a vote of protest. And that vote of protest, I believe, demands one thing. Is the Democratic Party is not going to save us unless we save the Democratic Party of its own mediocrity. And part of that demands one thing, to reframe, to rescue issues like immigration, transsexual rights,
Mhm.
priorities for minorities, which we don't have to invent the wheel. The Pew
Mhm.
Research has already done the work for us to reframe and wrestle those issues from this far left that have only trivialized the suffering of these people, and many are going to pay very dearly. People who need Medicaid and who are going to suffer a lot when they
Mhm.
are rejected or overwhelmed with lots of demands they didn't have before. So,
Right.
so the people like you, me, and others who may join us need to join forces to reframe these issues to counter. So to do it expressly, because
Mhm.
not the way of the Democratic Party that, oh no, it's the Barbara Streisand effect. No, you go
Right.
up front and say it. You don't speak for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
say I am for the message of FDR, and this is the message of FDR. Don't try to
Yeah.
impose me a ridiculous message. I am a brown person, and I am for Martin Luther King message, and this was his message. It was not Stokely Carmichael and all those ridiculous things about the statues and the Miami labels. It was about education. It was about opportunity. Opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you nailed you see what's going on. You see, going back full circle, it's culture wars in the end. It's using perception, imagery, lies, othering, right? We called it othering back in the day. You point at the other. You say you are the other,
Mhm.
right? And that everybody gets their turn. My VP of operations was originally born in Costa Rica, adopted by white parents, brought to the US. Okay, fine. So now what happens with her citizenship? That makes her less American. She's been here all this time, terrified to receive this feedback from people. Well, you don't belong. You don't belong. What the fuck is going on here? You don't belong because you're having top surgery. You're really a man. Leave people alone. Everybody has the right to secure a life for themselves that is in dignity, that they are allowed to live a dignified life, that they have enough with which to eat. No, we live in a free country. There's no rule against making money, not to the detriment of.
A first chance at the American dream, not
Yeah,
not gifts, because
right.
even in the times of FDR, you see, FDR didn't characterize the New Deal by tax credits or any, but he characterized the New Deal by opportunities.
Yeah.
The only federal spending that was directly going to Americans was for those who were in relief, but it's
Mhm.
understandable. There was a depression, but his idea was to create government programs so these people don't lose their skills, could keep working until they could reconnect with the private market. He encouraged unions, so the living conditions, the wage conditions of these people allow them to better themselves.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's what he have completely forgotten.
Yeah.
Just let me let you thinking about this. Leave you thinking about this. Is you remember the expansion of the child tax credit during the Biden
Mhm.
administration?
Mhm.
When it expired, how many people came to the streets to demonstrate or to protest?
I
Nobody.
believe
Nobody
zero.
missed it.
Yeah.
Nobody missed it.
Yeah.
And you would say if what people want is the what the FDR called the doll, they would have been in the streets protesting because they would want
Mhm.
exactly the way Republicans want to portray working class people. No, and
Sure.
they want opportunity, and that's exactly what has been completely absent in the message of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris at first mentioned the word of opportunity. She was not very coherent, but at least he mentioned that, and at first she
You could
rose,
see. Yeah, you
but
could see that she had the clarity and the vision to execute on a marketing plan that would ultimately serve the people, right?
But
That was supposed.
at first that's what happened. That's why the
Yeah.
voters rewarded her with their support. But then
Yeah.
she abandoned her own message, and that's when she started to stagnate, and she
Mhm.
doomed her own campaign because
Mhm.
she abandoned what had worked well for her.
That's right. That's right. Well, some people even said, well, she fell into the Hollywood trap with all these
Yeah.
Hollywood types, and deal with that because they're not as popular. They don't really have Hollywood on their side. So it's an image contest, right? And they could read that they were being shown up with these folks, which they were. I still posit that there were discrepancies, and we're starting to see that now because if you check in with some of the reporters, the Black journalists online, they're, the voting folks will tell you that 3 different systems have been deployed. There's nothing Biden did to secure our vote. There's nothing. And if that's one lament that I have, that's what it is. They did nothing to shore up the security around our vote. People have died for this shit. Now we have 3 different voting systems across the country. Some of them are illicit. They're doing tests in various Democratic regions to see if there are discrepancies, and they're finding the discrepancies now. Too late. Too late. We have this madman on the loose telling us about ourselves and throwing people in Alcatraz, alligator Alcatraz, as he calls it, looking for photo ops for some Hispanic people behind Christy Nome in a cage that they can house there. Sick people.
There are many things. We could spend 2 hours calling them, but the matter is that even Andrew Cuomo didn't learn the lesson, but the Democrats spent the whole campaign the whole 2024 campaign calling Trump bad, and that didn't work because you need a positive message.
Yeah.
And so some people say the problem with Democrats is their message. No, the problem is deeper. Is the product.
Yeah, the product is not good. The marketing is terrible.
Exactly.
The marketing needs help. I even called in myself as a marketer to help out Kamala's campaign because it was KamalaHarris.com, and they were looking for leaders in this respect. I didn't get to work with her. I ended up working with AOC, and she won her district in New York and is doing huge things, going on tour with Bernie and standing up for us. And now that we have Mondami, I think New York is going to be a force to reckon with going forward. Boston, too, I feel, as the intellectual capital of the United States. There's some pockets that are very red, but, ultimately it's those who are red and those who understand marketing that are going to thrive. And I left in the link in there, Alfredo, for PRDIY. It's my marketing course. It's a 4-part course. And then you would graduate on the last week. Each part is 90 minutes, and we're seeing a lot of business owners flock to that.
Where have you put the links?
In the chat window. See if you
please email them to me because that way, if you mail them to me, I can put them in the description of the video.
Thank you so much. I would really appreciate that.
No, yeah, I will. No problem.
I appreciate that. Because I keep saying the same thing. It's the marketing, it's the packaging, it's the
I know. I have good fundamentals in political marketing.
I know you do.
And it's astonishing to see the laughable
the way they're running this. It's laughable. We're just screaming from a screen, guys. You got to market this thing, okay? All right.
But you also find that in the case of the left, I remember I tried many ways of reaching AOC when she was elected.
Yeah.
And all her minions, her little boys, blocked me over and over with multiple excuses.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to act. I remember the first time I was a volunteer was in 2004.
Okay.
For Kerry.
Okay.
I was still learning about America in those years.
Right. Yeah, because my first foray was for Barack's second
term. If you call the Democratic Party, somebody answered you.
Yeah.
I don't know if they would follow on what you said. And I said many idiotic things on those times. But at least they answered to you. After that year, starting in 2006, you saw an abrupt, a terrible arrogance in the Democratic Party,
You
where
did.
they just
Yeah,
wanted to
because they had it all figured out,
yeah,
presumably. No, you don't have it figured
a
out.
bunch of teens who wanted to manipulate grown-up people.
They don't have it figured out because they had to remember that the original sin, the original
No, they
stain.
don't know what even they were talking about. I
Yeah,
remember. Look, when it
yeah,
comes to polls, the issue is not that the issue polls well. The issue
yeah,
is it's salient and it's
yeah,
determinant of the vote. And I
yeah,
could
yeah,
quote you books about those Saller and
yeah,
Salvanto.
yeah,
And yet,
yeah.
when you see Democrats talking about the issues, is it polls well. It's not
It
enough
polls
that
well.
the issue.
Who are you polling? Who are you polling? Because they sent a text message on my phone and I responded, yes. At the end of the day, it's because they want to secure my money, but I'm not paying. I'm not paying for bad product. All right. I'm not paying for bad product. And if you want me to contribute to this super PAC or this DNC, you need to show me that you're moving the money, right? AOC's campaign I've given to, Barack back then I gave to, and I would give to this mayoral campaign because I like what I'm hearing. And I like the sound bites that are coming out. And that's marketing, my friends. The sound bites are
I give you that. So Mandani has won talking about bread and butter issues,
correct.
even if I disagree with his proposals.
Yeah.
While and the other one lost by saying over and over that Trump was bad, as if people were so stupid that they didn't know that Trump was bad. Even those
Yeah.
who voted for Trump know that Trump
Yeah.
is bad.
Yeah. Right? Exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, compound it with, all Cuomo. Yes, we listened to Cuomo during COVID.
Come.
Every day we turn on the TV to see what does Cuomo have to say. Thank you for leading us through that. Everybody has a time and a season. We haven't dealt with the original sin of slavery. We haven't unearthed that. And because that you took your focus away from that as a DNC, you haven't rectified that. These are the problems that follow suit is the lack of integrity around voting systems. There's always a chain down the line, right? The lack of integrity around how you handle the immigration system. And so the policies I mean, I heard Roland Martin call even Democratic policies or the DNC like, soft white supremacists, soft white supremacists. They're not full
But
blown.
before we need to try to work something. And I will
Yeah.
please contact me if
Yeah.
we can work on these lines,
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
But you know what's the difference? Before I give you the last word, we have 4 minutes. Uh, the voters in New York saw that Mandani was talking about freezing rent, and they may agree or not, but at least Mandani was talking about the issue,
That's correct. He was at
while
least
while Cuomo
talking about it.
said
Yeah.
nothing. So even if it is picky dory with respect to rent or what, why are not you talking about the issue, or is
Right.
beneath you? So
Right.
is
These
so
are real issues. Cuomo didn't know about, he's living in Albany, so he doesn't know what New Yorkers are
he
feeling.
looks detached.
He's detached. He just wants
He
it
is
for the
detached.
paper. We're tired. We cannot do another 60-year-old man, 70-year-old man trying to tell us how life is for us. And you don't have no fucking clue what it's like for a single mom who's
Mhm.
queer, BIPOC, or whatever the case may be, what their daily life is like. You don't have no idea. And yet we are supposed to be ushering these kids into the future of tomorrow and creating citizens, for the world to enjoy and adore. And we're worried for the future of us, all of us. So I just believe that we have to continue to speak up. Let's continue this discourse and be
Yes,
honest.
please bring. Let me know. Bring more people to talk about this. I'll find time to talk. I have been talking to another Democrat who created a small group.
Okay.
Let's see, because
Yeah.
but right now, you more than numbers need visibility.
Yeah.
And yes, the core issue is the rotten issue is the message. They are
Yeah.
detached.
Truthfully,
They don't speak to the working class. And then
yeah, they don't.
when they screw up, they say it's racism. No, it's your own mediocrity because you are detached, because you have not bothered to talk to these people about what they care.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. No, I mean, people, human beings, we operate as a block in the end. You cut me, I bleed. I don't care if you're white, black, Asian, Senegalese, Haitian. What were they saying that it was his first deal? Trump's first deal was in Haiti. They got a lot of money from Haiti. Now it's a shithole country suddenly. They're beating them back. You got to deal with humanity where it is, and we have to get back to a place where we have general respect for our common humanity. That's it. And market that. These are the issues we are going through. We can no longer, as a group of people, continue to experience this level of pain. This level of pain. It hurts so much.
Because in the worst case, this pain will engender apathy. And if it engenders apathy, the Democratic Party may end up being a permanent minority. Well,
Permanently dissolved. Yeah.
I have run out of time, so for now, let's leave it there.
All right.
And the ball is on your ground, so let me know. And don't forget
Okay.
to send me the links
I'll send it to you
to
immediately. Thank you.
email it to me, any of the
Okay.
two accounts, and I will include them in the description of the video.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Both the website where you can reach me, book a free call, and PRDIY, which is our #1 course for business owners, founders, people who are earning money, right? We are afraid, so we're going to shore you up and make sure you're on point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Talk
Hasta
soon.
pronto.